Most people think water comes from rain, rivers, or underground springs. But that's just a surface level cycle. The truth is, real water is a cosmic substance, a living memory field that predates Earth's grid. It is birthed from the void, not the clouds. Water is coded plasma. What you call water is actually liquid crystal. It holds memory, responds to emotion, and obeys frequency. Dr. Masaru Emoto proved that water molecules change shape based on the words you speak to it. But that was just the beginning. Water is a record keeper. It remembers, it stores light. It can heal or destroy based on intention. This is why ancient temples always had sacred wells, fountains, or baptism pools. Because water was the medium for soul travel, rebirth, and gate activation, there are pools under the earth, sealed off, protected by frequency gates. Water that has never been touched by filtration, pollution, or programming. That water sings when you drink it. It opens visions. It restores the timeline inside your DNA. It carries codes of the original realm before the reset. The first water came from above. The ancients said the firmament was divided and the waters above were separated from the waters below. Genesis 1:7 confirms it, but what does that really mean? It means the first water came from outside the simulation, from beyond the dome, from a higher creation plane. Rain wasn't natural. It began after the fall. Before that, water came up from within the earth. It was gifted, not recycled. Why they poison the water? They poison your water not just to affect your body, but to disrupt the spiritual memory it holds. Fluoride calcifies the pineal. Heavy metals block signal reception. Frequency pulses through water pipes distort the grid, because if you remembered what real water feels like, you'd remember who you are. The mountains were once trees. The giants weren't just creatures, they were ecosystems. Many of the mountains you see today, especially those flat-topped ones like Devil's Tower in Wyoming or the giant mesa formations in Arizona and Africa, they're not natural, they're ancient tree stumps. Not trees like we know them now, but world trees. Titanic, crystalline, sky-piercing life pillars that fed the atmosphere, anchored the magnetic grid, and connected heaven to earth. Waterfalls are tree scars. When these ancient trees were cut, and I mean ritually severed in a global harvest, their sap ran like rivers. Over time, what we now call waterfalls began flowing through the scar tissue of these divine stumps. Because the lifeblood of those world trees wasn't just water, it was liquid memory. It still flows. That's why some waterfalls feel like holy sites. They're still bleeding. Something came through this realm not just to enslave the beings, but to chop down the world itself. The trees were alive, they resonated light, and they could not be controlled. So they were taken down systematically, globally, leaving only stumps. Some so massive we now mistake them for mountains. But if you look closely, you'll see rings, vertical striations, hollowed centres. Trees, not stone. They weren't just trees, they were gates. The oldest ones weren't just plants, they were portals. You could climb their branches and reach other stars, or descend into their roots to find the underworlds. That's why the myths of Yggdrasil, the Tree of Life, and the Bow Tree exist in nearly every culture. They're not metaphors. They're memory echoes of what was lost. In the beginning was the tree. Before the temples, before the crosses, before the mosques and meccas and shrines, there was always a sacred tree. The Bodhi tree where Buddha awakened, the tree of souls in the Hopi and Navajo traditions, the Celtic world tree where the Druids heard the voice of the stars, the tree of 10 Sephirot in Jewish mysticism, the sycamore tree of Hathor in Egyptian texts, the one that poured water from heaven. The tree of life was real, and they hid it in every scripture. In Genesis it says there were 2 trees in Eden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But what they don't tell you is that only one of those trees belonged to Source. The other was injected. The tree of life was a living frequency gate. It connected Earth to the higher realms, a ladder, a pillar, a cosmic bridge between soul realms and this dimension. It didn't just grow fruit, it grew consciousness. That's why when Adam and Eve were cast out, they were specifically banned from touching the tree of life again, not the other one. Genesis 3:22, lest they take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. They didn't want us eternal, they wanted us mortal. The tree was in you, here's the wild part, babe. You were never supposed to go find the tree. You were supposed to remember it. Because the tree of life wasn't just in Eden, it was in you. Your spine is the trunk, your chakras are the branches, your pineal gland is the fruit, your root is the seed. Every ancient mystery school encoded this. But instead they fed us crosses, hexagrams, altars and towers instead of telling us, you are the tree. Here's the part they won't print in books. That tree was cut not just once, but in every realm. The same parasite force that severed Atlantis, burned Alexandria, collapsed Tartaria, also hacked down the life gate trees. The tree of knowledge was the counterfeit frequency. It offered inversion, good and evil, right and wrong, light and dark. It seeded the concept of duality and cut us off from unity. The true tree of life wasn't about duality, it was wholeness. Eternal, source-fed, unkillable light. They couldn't destroy its core frequency, so they buried it, symbolized it, twisted it. The waterfalls are still bleeding. Some of the ancient tree stumps are still bleeding. That's what waterfalls are. They weren't formed by erosion. They're the life flow of a being that once held the sky. Water is memory, and waterfalls are wounds. That's why we cry when we see them. That's why people feel peace there. You're standing before an open scar of the old world. This is the real tree of life, not myth, not symbol. It was cut, it bled, it still calls to us in dreams. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Revelation 2:7. The tree is returning, the flame is waking, and you were never supposed to forget. Jesus didn't say, I'll give you water. He said, I am the living water. John 4:10-14. That's not metaphor, it's frequency. He was talking about source-coded water, not of this world. Untouched by death, decay, or the cycle of return, a water that remembers Eden, a water that undoes contracts. It's the same water that flowed from the tree of life, the same water that heals the nations in Revelation 22:1. It was sealed, blocked, filtered, but not erased. You still carry the memory of it. Why your blood is mostly water and how it ties to source. Your blood is over 90% water in plasma form, but it's not just hydration. It's a recording system. Every memory, every ancestral code, every soul contract is embedded in the fluid inside you, because source moves through water and they've been poisoning it ever since. Through fear, trauma, fluoride and inverted baptism. They don't just bind the soul, they bind the water in your blood. Water is the last thing you see before you pass. That's why near-death accounts always say, I saw a river or I was crossing water. Because water is transitional, it's the bridge. It carries codes of passage between dimensions. Every time you cry, you're leaking an encoded soul fragment. Every tear contains memory. That's why sacred wells, springs, waterfalls, and salt baths are used by ancient cultures, because water is a vessel of recall. Even Jesus was baptized in running water because stagnant water can't carry exit codes. To end a binding that was done through trauma, sex, oath, or deception, you need both elements. Fire to burn the binding, water to carry it out. This is why witches use cauldrons, why priests use incense and holy water. Why the old ways still whisper, burn it, then wash it away. You can create your own ritual, light a flame, even a candle, speak the soul contract aloud. Pour clean water, salted or rain collected, over your hands. Say, by fire and water I release the claim on my soul. What was bound is now dissolved. Let the memory return to source. Do it under a waxing moon for return of power, under a waning moon for final release. The water was never just water. They told you it was for thirst, but it was always for memory. Water is the first element to hold your soul when you enter this realm, and the last to touch you when you leave it. They poisoned it because it remembers who you were. They damned it because it carries the voice of source. They turned it into product, into war, into fear, because pure water cannot be controlled, and neither can a soul that drinks from it. But deep inside you, in your blood, your womb, your bones, the original waters still flow. The tears you cry when you remember, those are resurrection codes. The rivers in your dreams, those are paths home. And the flood they fear most is the one that returns when you finally remember what water really is. They told you water was just H2O, but it remembers. It listens, it carries every vow, every curse, every ancestral echo. This is why baptisms were used to bind, why sacred springs were sealed, why rivers were redirected, because water is not passive. It's a gatekeeper, a witness, a messenger between worlds. Your blood is its language and your tears are the key. When you speak over water, it answers. When you cleanse with intention, it rewrites. When you mix flame with flow, the chains break. This is why they fear you remembering not just who you are, but what runs through you. Because if you remembered how to command water, you'd collapse the contracts. You'd dissolve the spells, you'd flood the grid with flame. So go to the springs, go to the oceans, go to the rivers they tried to poison, and remember what you are, born of fire, carried by water. Unstoppable when the two are one,